I'm going to have a confession. I I don't like facilitation.
Bob Gallen is an Agile practitioner, trainer, and coach. In his role, he helps Agile companies and teams in their pragmatic adoption of organizational shift towards Agile ways of working. Bob has been doing that since 1990.
I hate to say it this way. I don't know if you all are aware in the Agile community, like coaching, at least in the US and in Europe, there's a lot of value turbulence. There's coaches getting laid off. There's a lot of organizations that don't understand the value. And I think one of the things that's happened in the coaching community is her position was there's something wrong with me, right? I'm a bad coach. Do I need to work out more?
He's a director of Agile practice at Zenergy Technologies, leading business of transformation company. Bob is also president and head coach at Agile Moves. He is a Scrum Alliance certified enterprise emeritus, IC Agile authorized trainer, and an active member of the Agile Alliance. He's published 4 Agile-centric books: Agile Reflections in 2012, The 3 Pillars of Agile Quality and Testing 2015, Scrum Product Ownership, 3rd edition now in 2019, and the Extraordinarily Badass Agile Coaching in 2022. Bob is also a prolific writer and blogger. He's on Substack now, and he's a podcaster at metacast.com. Welcome, Bob. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jason. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. So thank you for having me, and let me share my screen. And I'm just going to share not in presenter, but in a different mode for everyone. So don't mind it. It'll be fine. So let me go back. I was just looking. I have title-itis. So Jason and I were talking about the title. So I have 3 titles, and I'm going to go back and forth. The first title for this talk, and it's the same material, so the content doesn't change, but the title has changed. So the first one was Exploring Aspects of Extraordinarily Badass Agile Coaching. I use that sometimes. Then there's one that says Everyone is or can be an Agile coach. And the talk tries to talk about coaching skills and separating the title or the role from the skills. So, I firmly believe this, that any role that you have could benefit from coaching skills. And then the one that Jason and I landed on, and I'll try to shock you along the way, but I'm not sure I'll deliver, is 3 shocking reasons why Agile coaching isn't just for experts. But they all center on the same thing, which is I want you to focus on coaching skills, independent. If you're a Scrum Master, I think this is relevant. If you're a leader, I think it's relevant. If you're a product owner, I think it's relevant. If you're a team member, I think it's relevant to have coaching skills. You don't have to be a coach, but I think the skills and the mindset can be really useful in my experience. So Jason did a real neat job of talking about me. The thing he missed, the most important thing he missed, is I'm an avid collector of potato heads. And my favorite potato head is there on the screen. That's Darth Tater. My grandchildren love playing. I have 4 of them. I've purchased 4 copies of Darth Tater. I have one for the grandkids to play with, one for other kids to play with, one for me to play with, and then one for posterity's sake that's still in the wrapping. So and I have about 200 of them. That's probably the most important aspect for me to introduce me as the potato head collector. Anything else? No. All right. So our agenda today, I'm going to talk about something called the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel, which is a model or a framework for Agile coaching. We're going to explore mindset a little bit. We're going to explore a conversational model. I don't know if we're going to do a bit of practice. We might have it, depending on the time, we might do a bit of practice as a group, I think. Not in breakout rooms. So I've noticed when I try to do breakout room practice in virtual sessions, like 50% of the people bail. and they go for the exits. So I'm not going to scare you. We're not going to do practice in breakout rooms. So please don't leave. It'll be safe. It'll be if we do it at all. So when I say coach or coaching, it's a really broad definition, like I was alluding to. It's really role independent, uh, and then it's something that we all, I think, we should aspire to be adept at. And it's something that you never ever accomplish and then stop. To me, it's like leadership. You're always developing your leadership skills, or you can be. It's not a 2-year program and then you stop and you're a wonderful leader. And in coaching, I don't think in 6 months I'm a coach and now I never have to read a book or practice or be self-aware, etc. I don't know if you all are aware of history of it, of frameworks for coaching, but there's a historical framework called the Agile Coaching Competency Framework. It was created, I believe, I'm pretty sure, by Lisa Atkins and Michael Spade. Lisa wrote a coaching book. It was published in 2010, sort of the seminal coaching work for Agile coaching. It's still valid to this day. It's still wonderful and valid to this day. And in it, they talk about competencies, coaching competencies, or what I think of as stances. I very often use the terms interchangeably: skills, competencies, and stances that a coach would sit in. Sometimes I talk about putting on the hat of. Does that make sense to everyone? Like I put on the hat of a coach or a professional coaching, or I put on the hat of a facilitator, or the mindset. And it's a wonderful framework. It's sometimes I often call it the X-wing framework, because of the X in the middle. It has 4 primary stances, and they're pretty self-evident. One is facilitating. Everyone good with that? Facilitating meetings, facilitating training. So coach as facilitator. Think of it that way. There's another one, coach as teacher. I think of that as group-based teaching or group-based guidance. You're teaching a group. Could be 2 or 3 people running a class. It could be just sitting down with a small group of people. Coach as mentor. I think coach as mentor is more one-on-one, side by side. So to me, it's more one-on-one. Let me show you how to do this, and then could you show me how you would do it? And we're sort of talking to each other through something. And then the one that's probably not the most confused, but that has nuance to it, is professional coaching. And I think of that as asking questions, asking good questions. How many people have ever, sort of done that or thought about professional coaching stance? There's this term powerful coaching, or powerful questions that complement that, where you don't solve your clients, whoever you're coaching is your client, a team or an individual. You don't solve your clients' issues. They solve them themselves by you asking them targeted questions for their reflection. Sometimes you can overdo it. Anyone ever overdo professional coaching stance? Sometimes I call it death by 1,000 questions, right? If you're coaching client, whether it's a team or an individual, if their eyes have ever rolled up into their head, and they look like they're going to sort of pass out, you may have overdone the questions a little bit. You may have been in professional coaching stance too long, and all 4 of those stances, the coach can navigate through them in a coaching session context. And depending on your skill, you in an individual coaching conversation, you may start as mentor and then you may move to teacher, or you may start as professional coach asking questions and then move to mentor. That's a common pattern for me, is entering a coaching conversation, professional coaching, and then moving to mentoring, or moving to teaching would be a common sort of movement for me in that. So that's history. It was created in 2010.
Yeah, just Bob, can I just ask a question about moving stances?
Sure,
Do you
sure.
do you think it's appropriate to ask for permission to move stance if you're in a coaching conversation?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, some people, I think a lot of people, when I'm teaching or coaching coaches, a lot of coaches I coach, if you will, in training, etc. I think most people don't. They actually don't tell the world that they're switching stances, and so they're coaching a team or something, and they want to hide it. It's like a coaching decision, if you will, Jason. And I probably 95% of the time when I switch a stance, I do it in collaboration with my client. I'm
Yeah,
like, would it be helpful? Would it be helpful for me? Like I've been asking you, Christina, I've been asking you lots of questions, right? and your eyes are almost rolling up. Would it be helpful for me to switch to an advisory stance or a consultative stance? Or would it be more helpful to mentoring for you? And maybe I pre-explained the stances with you a little bit so you don't know, I'm not speaking gibberish. But I think of dancing with the client, Jason, as a collaborative, as sort of a collaborative exercise, not a hidden exercise for the
mm,
coach.
yeah,
There's very few times where I'm not doing that. We're doing it together, if you will. Does that make sense?
absolutely. Yeah.
Good question. So then everyone, a few years ago, there was an Agile Coach retreat, a coaching retreat where the Scrum Alliance sponsored it, and they had a group of coaches that met for a few days, and they do little Scrum team sort of exercises, and one of them started thinking about how the world of Agile coaching. And do we need to add to the framework, to the X-Wing framework? Do we need to augment it in some way? Do we, how is it serving us? And in the world of coaching, the profession of coaching, actually, and as a community exercise, they created the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel, probably around 2017, 18, I think, if I remember. And during that time, they added a few stances to the growth wheel uh, that the Agile Coaching Competency Framework didn't have. So let me go here. Maybe this is the best one to talk about. Let me see something. Oh, here we go. I'll use this one. So the things they played with is they took mentoring and teaching and they combined them. They aggregated them into guiding learning. Everyone. So it's the same. It's the same stances I talked about, but they just combined them for in the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel. Uh, Facilitating is exactly the same in context, I think. And then coaching, professional coaching is exactly the same. So they move them into the wheel, if you will. Two stances they added that I thought were missing. I had a bit of a hand just by blogging and influencing the evolution, uh, uh, but again, it wasn't directly me. It was more of a community effort. One is advising. The Agile Coaching Competency Framework never really gave you direct permission to provide advice or to consult with a client. Does that make sense to everyone? Shirley, you get that? Right. So it was almost illegal to give someone a suggestion. I'm kidding around a little bit, but you weren't right. You could ask a question so they could come to the conclusion, but if they didn't get it, you didn't provide advice. So we added advising. I bring my expertise and consult with you and provide counsel. I could be a sounding board for you, if that makes sense, a partner. Doesn't mean I tell you what to do. It just means that if I have experience and stories to tell, then I'm sharing them. I'm advising you. I think of it as being consulting. Any of you consultants or ever been a consultant? And you provided advice to a client. Yeah. So now you have permission. So now the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel is giving you permission to do that. The other thing that it did, it has added another stance called leading stance, or what I think of as leadership stance. Coach as leader. And in this case, it's coach as role model, if you will. You're leader, you're serving others, you're in service to others. So it's amplifying leadership service to others, your client, but you're also coaching from the front of the room. Like you're an advocate for Agile. You might be in the front of the room and being a domain expert and providing guidance to an organization. You are the thought leader, so you're leading. Coaching in front is sort of a metaphor that I think of when I'm leading. One of the things related to that is being aware of your leadership responsibility as a coach. Well, and again, this isn't just the label coach. This is you're a leader no matter what you're called. People are watching you. I want you all to write this. People are watching you no matter what your title is. If you're in an agile context, you're leading by example. People watch your behavior. If Jason is a coach in my organization, and every time he opens his mouth and gives me some really cool wisdom, I roll my eyes, then I am leading by negative example, right? Or if I fall asleep, then I'm leading by an ultra negative example, right? And if I lean in and say, "Wow, Jason, how cool is that idea?" then I'm leading by positive example. I'm role modeling. So it's really important to sort of set that stage. The other thing that the wheel provides that I skipped over a little bit is if you look in the middle, it's self-mastery. So the hub of the wheel is self-mastery, self-awareness. Think of it as this idea that coaching from the inside. I find so many agile coaches, we like to coach others, but we don't walk our talk. I'm not going to ask anyone to self-identify, but very often it's so much easier to coach. Like Fareed, Fareed is out there coaching and saying whip limit is bad. Whip limit is so bad. Reduce your whip limit. Focus on flow. You all know Fareed. He's like a flow wizard. He's always talking about flow and reducing whip. And but then you look at his life, and Fareed is working on 22 books. He's got 18 clients he's working on, right? He can barely go to the bathroom. That's how much stuff is going on in his life. But he's talking about whip limits. Well, his behavior isn't aligned with his words. Everyone get what I'm saying? He's not walking his talk. It's incredibly important for us that if we're coaching, if we're influencing, for leadership to walk your talk, and that's part of that self mastery. Another aspect of it would be being coachable. Believe it or not, one of the hardest people I find, or groups I find to coach. Anyone guess who are some of the most challenging people in the agile community to coach? Guess what? They are coaches. so I have a funny story. I don't think I have time to share it, but I had to do an emergency intervention at a coaching retreat once for a group of coaches who were operating as a team. They were kicking people off the island. They were running amok, and it was after like a few hours. They couldn't form a team. And they were incredibly experienced coaches. My point is self-mastery. Really, before you work on other things, work on you. Look in the mirror and look at that. And that's something the wheel pops out that I think is incredibly important. It also has these other sort of competencies that mirror the X-Wing model. Agile lean chops, a servant orientation, and then transformation skills. Or organizational transformation skills. They're all translatable, but I highlighted the key differences, and I think they're key differences to make us well-rounded. The other thing is I love the metaphor, but I'm not becoming an X-Wing coach. Not that there's anything wrong with X-Wings, but I'm becoming a well-rounded, right? I'm working on becoming more well-rounded as a coach. What did I want to do? Okay. The final thing that the X-Wing model talks about is it has 5 levels of competency. There's a few assessment models in the market for this framework. There's some free ones around that you can assess your skills. I think I have a link towards the end around that. One of the things the X-Wing never did is really said, what does good look like from a coaching point of view? Think about it as, how do I progress? If I'm a beginner, how do I get better? And what does it look like and then how do I become a practitioner? And how do I become a guide? Whatever the terminology is, how do I grow? And give me specifics of what that might look like in my skill set. And the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel does is to define some terminology and some sort of skills related to 5 levels per competency. Make sense to everyone? So facilitator, I can be a beginning facilitator. And it explains it. It's not grading me. It's not intended to grade you. It's not intended to give you promotions related to your competency growth. It's really an inside out view of how do I become better as a coach, and where am I now, and what do I need to achieve to get better. And I love that about it. It's a growth, so it's an emphasis on the growth. It's Agile Coaching Growth Wheel, and it's a personal growth model. Not, it can be used organizationally. I've seen many, sort of teams of coaches use it for team-based growth or organizational growth. Uh, but it's really intended to be for personal growth.
I just interject as well. Like I use the X-wing and also the growth wheel when coaching other coaches, and get them to sort of color in, a percentage complete of where they are, where they feel that they are, and where they'd like to be, and we co-create sort of action plans around that. So I like the metaphor of the wheel too, because you can color in certain sections and go, oh, I feel like I'm quite proficient there, but I'd really like to focus on this. Be quite self-driven.
Absolutely. I love that comment. I'm going to stop for questions, but I want to make one more comment about the wheel. It's okay, everyone. A mistake people are making about the wheel is they're trying to aspire to have a well-rounded, like a very smooth wheel. And I'm going to say it's okay to have a lumpy wheel or an uneven wheel. So for example, I'm going to have a confession. I I don't like facilitation. It's not my favorite competency. I'm good at it, but I just don't get joy in facilitation. So my facilitation, if I go back, my facilitation is probably practitioner level, and it's never going to grow. I'm not going to work on it. I'm good enough. So that part of my wheel is going to be a little lumpy. One thing I've been working on for years now is professional coaching. I've been going to classes, and I've been practicing and working on my professional coaching skill. Uh, I I leadership I'm pretty good at, and advising is a very strong skill for me. So advising would be a lump. I would probably be a catalyst in maybe in leading, or close to a catalyst in leading and advising. But again, I'm going to have a lumpy wheel because I'm focusing on areas, the one where I need to, what does my job need for me? Where is my passion? Where's my interest in things like that? So it's okay, as you're developing the wheel, you want to look at your job and the role. What do they expect from? So where am I? Where are my skills? What are the expectations for my role? What are the expectations for my job, for my context? Where is my joy? Where do I get really excited? Like, I hate to tell you, I get excited being coaching leaders. A lot of people avoid coaching leadership. I love coaching leaders. They're the most special people on the planet Earth. I'm not saying they're it's a huge challenge for me. I've been a leader. So that's an area where I get great joy because it's so interesting and it's so challenging sometimes. So I think what I'm saying is, make the wheel, the competencies, your own. It's a wonderful self-awareness tool, and it's a wonderful growth tool, but it's your growth in your context. So any questions so far about anything I've said sort of in that universe? Anyone? I'd love to hear a couple of wonderful voices before we go on. I should have restated that. We're not going to move on until I hear from at least one or two wonderful voices to check hearing. So
Actually,
we're just going to,
sorry, this is Vikram here. I like the way
Vikram.
you said you are not, you're always improving at facilitation. I think that's a important revelation we all need to have. Is we are never really good at anything, right? We are always learning, because every session is a new approach. You meet new people. So thank you for that.
Vikram, you're right. And I hate to say it this way. I don't know if you all are aware in the Agile community, like coaching, at least in the US and in Europe, there's a lot of turbulence right now. There's a lot of value turbulence. There's coaches getting laid off. Uh, there's a lot of organizations that don't understand the value and things like that. And I think one of the things that's happened in the coaching community is complacency. So I've seen a lot of mediocrity and complacency where coaches, once they get the label, they're like, oh my goodness, it's like I've become God. So there's God, and then there's the Agile coach. And once you achieve the label of Agile coach, you're like, I'm done. I don't have to learn anything anymore. I've arrived. I think it's like arrivism. I've arrived at a role. Please don't, none of you have that mindset. That's a terrible mindset. And it's not going to serve you well in the long term. You want to be continuously curious. So curiosity is another one of those aspects of self-mastery to me, is being continuous learning, and insatiable curiosity would help you develop that as part of your self-mastery. Someone else? Any other reactions? It doesn't have to be a question. It could be a reaction.
I have a
I like
reaction, Bob.
Oh, so I heard Shirley and then another one. So Shirley, go first. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just really love how you hold the mirror up for us and just really highlight that we don't always walk the talk. And that's one of the most important things to do as coaches, is not just talking and telling or asking good questions to people, but asking yourself.
I couldn't agree more, Shirley. I'm starting to teach something called a Badass Agile Coaching Masterclass. I created it. It's not a certification class. It's sort of my own thing. And I invest, it's a cohort that runs for like 15 weeks, 14, 15 weeks. And I spent 4 or 5 weeks in the beginning focusing on self-mastery. And I think the attendees think that I'm crazy because I keep holding the mirror up and holding the mirror up. And they're like, you're not telling us to, come on, you're supposed to tell us how to coach others. And I get, they get so impatient with me. And at the end, I think they sort of get it, that it really is important as part of the balancing act, to be self-aware and to be, another aspect of it is to be coachable. I would ask all of you if you have a coach. And if you don't have a mentor and a coach, it's really if you're doing coaching in any form, Scrum Master, coaching, whatever, it's really a good idea to have someone who's coaching you. It's also a growth idea to be coaching others, maybe informally, to grow your skills. So thank you, Shirley. I heard another voice.
Yes, that was me, Bob. I'm Kate. Thanks a lot for
Hi, Kate.
this amazing presentation. Hello. I just what comes to mind when you're talking about the lumpy wheel is, we want to strive for progress, not perfection, and you can still
Exactly.
move forward with a lumpy wheel. You're still moving forward, and that's what I that really resonated with me. So thank you.
Very, very cool. Absolutely. Maybe it's don't focus on that perfection. I see folks, Kate, who are like, they're overwhelmed with learning because they're trying to create this perfectly balanced wheel. And the other thing is personal joy needs to come in. What gives you joy as a coach from a competency level? There's so much competency there. Find some joyfulness and increase those areas as well. All right, we're going to move on and talk about mindset, everyone. Coaching mindset. So that's another part of the three-legged stool. I think there's a three-legged stool for coaching. And the first sort of leg of the stool was the competencies and thinking about that. The second is your mindset. What's going on up here? I like this quote from, some of you don't know, this is someone called Kobe Bryant, who's a basketball player who's no longer with us in the US. He was a famous basketball player, and he talks about it's the magic within each of us that gives us the potential to inspire the world. And I think it's the mindset, the magical mindset of the coach. So some prime directives to think about as a coach. And this isn't a script. You don't go in and put a sticky note or tattoo yourself with these things to remind you. It's more so just you hold them very lightly. These are mindset ideas that you hold lightly in your mind. as you're coaching. So the first one is you don't want to do any harm. So you don't want to harm the client. You don't want to harm yourself. You don't want, oh, that was a terrible coaching experience. Please leave. We don't want you here anymore. So you want to do no harm to the universe as much as you can. Assume positive intent. I want you all to write that down. API, assume positive intent. There's too much malicious thinking in the coaching, or we get judgmental. Have any of you coached someone where you're like, they are a pointy-headed, waterfallist, and they'll never get agile, right? In your mind, you're smiling at them. You're smiling and you're being jovial, but in your head, you're like, oh, what? How stupid was that? How could you have done that? That's assuming negative intent. So assume positive intent as much as you can. Hold your client as capable, right? They're capable. Professional coaching stance, that's one of the tenets of professional coaching stance, asking questions, is you're looking at the world that the client is capable of solving their own problems or their own challenges. Now, that said, advising stance comes in and says, you know what, the client is not capable. They don't have the knowledge, so I can advise them and then maybe switch and dance in that. So establish and hold it's the client's agenda. It's not your agenda. It very often coaches, and there's nothing, sometimes the business makes us do this. The intent is I'm going to coach, who can I pick on? I can pick on Lisa Wang. Lisa, you don't have to come on camera. I'm going to coach Lisa Wang and I'm going to make her agile, right? So my charter is, it's my agenda. I don't ask Lisa what her agenda is. My agenda, and I'm going to forecast my agenda on top of Lisa and say, I am going to make you agile, whether you like it or not, or until death we part, right? You are going to become agile. That's probably not the right, you're holding a personal agenda. You want to try as a coach to figure out what the client's agenda is, or co-create an agenda is much more powerful than projecting, than sort of prescribing to folks. I very often call it push versus pull. It's, as a coach, am I pushing coaching into a group, into a team, or are they pulling it and asking me they want to be coached? And push is much less effective than pull. Does everyone get that? Because folks are asking for it. So now, sometimes we have to push. My job as a coach, and they assigned me to coach a team, so I'm initially pushing. But my first conversation with that team should be around, can I turn that push into a pull? Can I activate the team's curiosity in some way and create a co-create an agenda where it's my agenda and their agenda is our agenda, if you will. I help them have the courage to be patient in that push versus pull, etc. So some things like that. I'll meet them where they are. I don't know if any of you have ever met, if you're coaching, it's related to push versus pull. I meet a client, sort of where my boss or my sponsor wants them to be, but I'm not meeting them where they are. And I try to then shift and meet a team where they are, not where I want them to be, not where I hope they'll be. Always start at the beginning. And sometimes I think I know where they are, but I need to I need to observe the team. So I need to be quiet and observe and meet them where they are, understand where they are as part of meeting them where they are. Have empathy for their situation. I once was coaching a team, and I was giving them some advice. I was advising, probably mentoring. I was in coaching stance, so I was agile coaching, so I was probably in mentoring stance and advising stance and leading stance, a little bit of those in dancing, and giving them that good old fashioned 25 years of experience, Bob Galen advice, right? I've seen it 1,000 times before. And this one person raised their hands and they were sort of intimidated, like, Bob, can I ask you a question? And I'm like, sure, I know everything. No, I'm just kidding. And they said, well, that advice works for Bob Galen because you're Bob Galen and you're getting paid a lot of money to come in here and coach us. But I'm in the weeds here, and that doesn't work for me. And and it hit me in the head, and it says, you know what? You're absolutely right. right? I have privilege and I have gravitas that you don't. So therefore, my advice I need to meet the client where they are, not where my privilege has me. Does everyone understand? All of you have agile privilege, and you need to be aware of that in your coaching and patiently meet them where they are and understand where they are relative to where you are. And they were absolutely right. I can get away from, so the point is, I can get away with so many things as a coach, an outside coach, that internal coaches can't get away with. And we all need to be aware of where are we. So empathy, the point I'm trying to make with all those words is be empathetic. Part of self-mastery and is being empathetic to those you're coaching. Really extend empathy. And then be courageous and give them the truth they can handle as well. Be a truth talker. A part of empathy is walking in their shoes. This is particularly important if you're coaching up. If any of you coach up to leaders or out to sort of middle management, it's a lot of coaches, they coach and say, well, this is what Agile, like, have you read the Scrum Guide? So, or you should read the Scrum Guide. You're not reading the Scrum Guide, therefore you're wrong. Excuse me. Just hold on, everyone. I'm getting too excited here. And there's nothing wrong with reading the Scrum Guide, but you may not be walking in their shoes, right? You're being presumptuous. Again, it's walk in their shoes. Look at the world through their eyes. I could become really skilled at getting to understand whoever I'm coaching. And part of that is switching my view. I almost switch it from I'm coaching that person or that group, and then I become empathy. I grow my empathy, and then I mentally turn myself around and say, what does the world look like through their eyes? And I really try to envision what it looks like through their eyes. And that gives me insights in how to meet them where they are. It's that walking in their shoes. Sometimes I'll follow people around, not in any malicious way, not in a lurking way, but I'll follow leaders around and I'll observe for a little while before. And what I'm trying to do is to gather that empathy for their role. And it's not just empathy for them, but empathy for the ecosystem around them. Does everyone understand? You're not just coaching the individual, but the individual their behavior is being driven by the ecosystem around them, the system. So I'm trying to understand the system around them as well.
Bob, sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, is it pale?
This is Payal, yes. Before we move on, I had a question on the agile privilege. Can you give some examples of, like, what do you mean by everyone has a different privilege, agile privilege?
I think it's pale. It's your experience. Let's say you're an external coach and you come into an organization. So you're a consulting coach or someone patient, or if you're an internal coach, and that was the promotion of that is from senior developer to architect to now hierarchically, you're an agile coach, right? And it's like, so now you're above the team organizationally. You may not feel that way, but the team looks at you and say, oh my God, that's Payal. The organization has they've made her, she was a team coach, then she was an agile coach, then she was an enterprise coach. Oh my God, right? When she tells me that Scrum is king, I better listen to her. Well, now you're empowered, or you have privilege in the agile space, or you may have privilege in your organizational title, or you may have privilege in your organizational tenure. Let's say you've been in the organization for 20 years and you're coaching a team with on average 3 years of experience, right? You have tenure, what I think of as tenure privilege. All I'm saying is be aware. A lot of people aren't aware of, like, the levels of privilege that they have, and just to take that into consideration when you're coaching others. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. The constraints each one has,
And it could be
advice,
and it could be privilege of being a man in technology versus a woman. There's a lot of nuance to it. So be aware of those privileges that you have. I need to be aware of, one of my privileges is being a man, like a white bearded white male coach in a lot of contexts. White beards seem to have strange effects to people. I don't know if you've ever noticed, if anyone's ever noticed that, but
I'm
so
not
I'm just
sure.
being, but no, what I'm saying is it's not, be aware of all of your privilege, or work on that over time. You're never going to be fully aware, but work on that over time, and it'll help you in what, empathy, and meeting people where they are and understanding that, and then moving them forward from that position. I hope that helped. Anyone else
It
have a
did.
question?
Thanks, Bob.
Okay. And then bias. How many of you have bias? Come on, everyone raise your hand. We all have bias. We have baggage, right? I'm an agile coach, but I've never seen a successful agile transformation. And I'm in an agile coaching role. And I've been beaten to death. I have scars all over my body from leaders. And, and I come in every day as an agile coach, and I have a smile, but I bring these biases. I still have a bias. Remember I said that I like coaching leaders, everyone? I still look at leaders as being, most leaders, I look at them as pointy-headed leaders in my head. I'm like, you are a Dilbert leader. You're a waterfall. Sometimes I have the mental image of, you're a waterfall leader. I don't say it out loud, but in my head, oh my God, if I have to talk to you one more time about Agile, my head's going to explode. So that's a bias that I have, and I need to clean that up before I coach. To the best of my ability. It's still, and because I'm scarred, right? I've worked with a lot of really challenging leaders. So before I coach, I need to clean my head up a little bit and drop my baggage as much as I can. Part of my coaching is I prepare for every coaching conversation for a few minutes. And one of the things I prepare for is what do I need to clean up in my biases and my baggage so that I can be a more effective coach in the next few minutes with a client, with a team. What if you're coaching a team and the organization says they'll never get agile? They're always underperforming, right? And if you meet them with that mindset, you're going to have a really hard time coaching. They're not going to move because your mindset is matching everyone's perception of them. So how do we manage our mindset? And finally, this goes back to self-mastery, walking your talk. One of the most powerful things you can do, I call it coaching by not coaching. It's actually, I can go into an organization and be paid to coach for a week and not say a word and still coach. Well, maybe a few words and still coach, but it's how I show up, right? How do I model? Remember that example I talked about earlier about rolling your eyes with Jason? Versus really leaning in and if I show up as a coach and I applaud people, it's like Selva. Oh my gosh, Selva, Selva's a junior engineer and he's really quiet. And he gets a little bit of courage and he suggests an alternative. And if I'm like, Selva, oh my God, what an interesting idea. Come on, high five me. Yeah, baby. Yeah, I love that idea. Right? I've never heard his voice. I never knew what your voice sounded like. Oh my gosh. I want to hear more of it. You should be singing Broadway tunes. Holy cow, right? It's wonderful. No, but I'm encouraging things. I'm not coaching things. I'm showing up with energy or positivity. I'm showing up with curiosity. I'm empowering the culture just by how I show up. Now, it has to be genuine. It can't be, you can't fake it, but if you genuinely have sort of a persona, it can affect things. You're walking your talk, or you're not, but people are watching how you behave. And it's an incredibly powerful, your role model, how you show up is an incredibly impactful part of your coaching stances. It is a coaching stance. I've actually, I think in my coaching journey, it's the most powerful stance that I can adopt is how I'm present with my client really matters. So enough of that. Any thoughts around mindset? Reactions? Anything? We're getting close to being done, everyone. Jason?
Just got a quick question.
Oh,
Okay.
please do.
Kate again.
Okay.
Sorry, you want me to shut up in a minute, but what's been rattling around in my head is, have you ever gone into a team and thought, oh shit, there's no way I can coach these guys, and then hightailed it out of there? Or have you
So
never met a coach you can't? Have you never met a team you
no,
can't coach?
well, so it's a good question. I'm going to answer it. I'm going to answer it in a lumpy wheel fashion. Uh, so the short answer is yes. So have I ever met a team or anyone who I'm like, shit, I'm in trouble? Yes. And that happens very quickly. Have I ever hightailed it out of there? Yes. Sometimes, now, usually, a lot of times my context is as an external coach. So it's easier for me to hightail it out of there than if you're
Yeah,
a permanent employee, right?
yeah, yeah.
So I don't want permanent employees to just leave their. So please don't leave your jobs because Bob Galen said you should hightail it out of there. So context matters. Now,
Yeah.
so that's that. Now, one of the things I've learned, Kate, over time is that it's a perfect question. I call it what I learned in one of my coaching programs is something called meta skills, and meta skills is the frame is your mindset of entering a coaching. So I can enter a coaching session with one meta skill is curiosity. Another meta skill. So I enter with the mindset. I predetermine that in order to be an effective coach, I need to go in with a mindset of curiosity, or I need to go in with a mindset of courageousness. I need to challenge their assumptions if I'm coaching leaders, or I might go in with a mindset of assuming positive intent, right? So those are meta skills that I'm putting on before coaching session. If I'm meeting a team like that, I would enter with curiosity and respect and assuming positive intent. Instead of entering it with they suck, they'll never get it, and I'm wasting my time.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not putting so it depends. If I enter with those negative meta skills, I'm contributing. That team will probably never respond to me as a coach. What I've found experientially, if I control my meta skills, very often it's not me, but then the team will respond to me because they will echo how I'm showing up with them, how I'm
Yes.
being present. Uh,
Yeah.
and that's a powerful realization. For years, I was blaming it on the client. I'm like, oh man, they never get it. And then I realized that it's yes, they were a challenge, but a big part of the challenge was my self-awareness of how I was showing up. I can't control them. Another way to think about this, everyone, this is really important. You can't make someone agile, you can't change them, but you can change how you show up as a coach. So nowadays, before I run away, Kate, I look myself in the mirror and I check my meta skills and see how I'm showing up. And probably 90+% of the time, if I change how I enter the system is more receptive to my
Yeah.
coaching. Did that
Cool.
help? Or
That was brilliant.
I
And
know
I know
that
it wasn't much to do
I
with
know
what we
that
were talking
sounds a
about.
little yeah, I know that sounds woo-woo, everyone. That may sound a little bit woo-woo. Oh, that how do I soften? But it's really true. I'd encourage you to try it. Try to change your meta skills in your client. And what I've noticed is when the system changes, it's really
Yeah.
kind of cool. Shirley, what do you
Brilliant.
got?
I just want to contribute a little bit to the woo-woo because I get a lot of the woo as well, but I call it energy. And just to highlight what you've been saying is I've noticed myself sometimes not making the time before the session to do what you mentioned, to prepare for the session. Now, yeah, it sounds woo-woo as well, but the energy that you create when you prepare for that session with getting into the right mindset, that helps not to be that um, vulnerable to then get and receive the energy that is already in the room when you walk into your session, which might not always be the best energy. And I've been a bit aware of that myself, and I'm like, great, now I really need to make sure that I make the time to prepare for the session so then I can show my best in each meeting as well.
You're nailing it, Shirley. Absolutely. It's critical. One of the things I think that's important that a lot of coaches miss, I miss it too, is you're being paid to coach. So a lot of people are like, I need to put hours in coaching people. It's almost like I'm having lunch with someone and I start coaching. It's like I'm on the clock. I need to coach. They're paying me to coach, so damn it, I'm going to coach. And what I've learned is you need to take time. You need to take time pre-coaching conversation, and I think you need to take time post-coaching conversation to reflect on it. I'm coaching. I do a fair bit of pro bono coaching. So there's a coach on the West Coast that I've been coaching for a while, and she came to me one day in a coaching session, and she's like, "Bob, right? My boss wants me to coach. She's a contract coach. She's an outside consulting coach, and she's like, they're telling me to coach more hours." And she was like, I'm exhausted at the end of the day. So if it's an 8-hour day, she's coaching 7 hours a day. So we're 7.53 hours per day. She's coaching, whether they like it or not. And she's like, at the end of the day, I'm just exhausted, Bob. I've forgotten what happened. It's just, and it's accruing. And her position was, there's something wrong with me, right? I'm a bad coach. Do I need to work out more or what? And I'm like, you could take that approach, or please try to talk to your stakeholders and talk about the quality of your coaching, and talk about when you're scheduling coaching, give yourself time to enter and give yourself time to exit and reflect. And it's really important to do that. It's not that kind of a job. In order to do so if the premise is I want to do my best coaching everyone, then it's not squeeze as much juice out of the lemon as you possibly can. It's to really take time for the effectiveness of the coaching. I firmly believe that. All right. Let's talk about coaching conversations a little bit, and then we'll land this plane. Thank you for all of the interaction, everyone. So I like a model. When you're coaching, I like to think of like an arc or a model to the conversation. I have it in my head. Yeah, as you notice, I have a tendency to talk too much. I don't coach that way. I present that way, but I do talk too much. So the model actually helps me to make sure that I'm guiding the conversation to a landing, right? It helps me to make sure there's an outcome. It helps me to make sure that we're not stalled in one place or the other. But I don't, it's not a straitjacket. It's just a mental model that I keep. So I like a coaching metaphor, a chess metaphor of opening moves, middle game, and end game. Just for me, opening moves are entering the conversation. And when I say client, I hope you all realize it could be a team, it could be a small group, it could be a group of leaders, it could be one person. So wherever you're coaching, this is sort of the model for whoever and however you're coaching. Ask permission. An important thing if you're coaching one-on-one is always ask permission and be prepared to take a no. Even if you scheduled it in Outlook, and ask permission, is this still a good time? And if the client isn't ready, then reschedule. A lot of coaches, remember I said it's my job to coach. So I'm going to coach you whether it's a good time or not, whether you're ready or not. That's probably not the best strategy is check the ecosystem. Establish goals. That's part of that agenda, the client's agenda. Start asking questions. Back to Jason was talking about dancing earlier, I think, if I remember, or dancing stances. I usually enter the arc in professional coaching stance. Probably 90% of the professional asking a few questions is a really good strategy for coaching entry, no matter how long you've been coaching someone. So I probably 80 to 90% of the time I enter in professional coaching stance, and then I dance elsewhere, depending on what I'm sensing and responding with the client, dancing with the client. Listening, direction finding is part of what I'm talking about. Then middle game is that conversational part, talking about options, exploring, asking more questions if you're there. Mentoring, you might be showing your client how to do something, teaching, clarification, etc. I think it is sort of opening up the narrative and then closing the narrative. So I think of it as maybe as an accordion effect in the middle game, because I need to then think about how do I land this session. Closure, ownership, to-dos, actions for the coach, getting feedback as a coach. How did this work for you? One of the things a lot of coaches don't do, I was listening to a recording of a professional coaching conversation the other day, and the coach and the client, and the coach was, what is your to-do? And what else are you going to do? And what else are you going to do? And do you need me to send you a reminder? And how many reminders do you want from me in the next 2 weeks? And what else are you going to do? And what else are you going to do? So they were just, I think they had a project manager mindset, and they were just hammering on the client. And I was thinking about not that, but where's your to do as a coach? And where's your feedback as a coach? I mean, where's your partnership? It's coach as project manager hammer would be the mindset, as opposed to coach as human being partner. And what can we do next, etc. So that could be that end game mindset. And then schedule a follow-up. Often one of the parts of the arc is rarely is an arc, really, in my experience, do I have a magical, sort of unicorn coaching session and a magical event and I'm done. Usually my arcs are connected. I'm coaching, and then I'm coaching a team again, and I'm coaching a team again, and I'm coaching a team again. So I'm connecting the arcs. So context matters, arc to arc to arc, but it's just a nice metaphor. I think it's nice. I recommend that you do have some questions in your back pocket. Now, I mentioned I need to do a time check. I've been talking, so I'll land soon. Jason, yeah. So I've seen coaches who get frozen looking for the perfect question to ask their client. There's a context and they're thinking, what's the perfect, powerful question? And they freeze for maybe 5 minutes, and the client is wondering, do they have a mental problem? Is there a problem here? Do they need to leave? Instead of, so they're frozen, and their intentions are good. So what I suggest as a coach is have a very small set of questions in your back pocket that you form for you, that you use in your coaching. Not in a mechanistic way, but you just have like an action set, and it's not 1,000. It's less than 10. And the coaching habit provides 7 questions that I found very useful for my go-to questions, so that I don't freeze trying to pick it's a perfectionist thing. I'm trying to pick, my heart's in the right place to pick the perfect question for my client. Then there's some listening advice. At the end of this presentation, we're not going to have time for it, but I have some scenarios that you can actually play with and say, how would I coach this scenario? You can do it in a role play, coach to coachee. And I have some scenarios here that you might want to play with your coaching. One of the ways to get better as a coach is to practice. One of the challenges is it's hard to practice in the real world because there's real world sort of complications. But if you can practice in a safe space with some colleagues, I call it dojo coaching. Then you can learn together, and these scenarios work for that. So enough of that. I'm just going to wrap up and say thank you, and if we have a few minutes for any follow-on questions, but it's been a real privilege to be here. So any follow-up?
Bob Silva here. See,
go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So when being as a coach going into the new corporate and all stuff, right? First things like when we're actually facing the client, they think we are going to change a lot of process or something because they used to it some kind of culture and defined process, which could be like best practices which they follow. But how we can present ourselves as we are here to help them, and do not see us we're going to change the whole process and the new techniques and all the stuffs. How do the first step we'll start approaching that?
I think what I've learned, Silva, is I think entry is really important for a coach. How you enter the system, how you enter a team, how you are entered, how does the organization enter you, and how do you enter yourself? And very often there's a lot of lazy entry, like not establishing a good, why is Silva here? What are we hoping organizationally he will accomplish? Mission and vision, things like that. And then you don't, and then maybe you get a little bit lazy in that you want to start coaching instead of maybe you should be explaining what agile coaching is, what it isn't to your clients. The Agile Coaching Growth Wheel is a wonderful model to use for that, to explain what it is and what it isn't. Entering maybe with your strengths. You remember Jason and I were talking about dancing? You can identify the stances with your clients, your team, or whatever. That's part of that entry. I think folks jump into the pond too soon without a lot of preparation. And I think what I've learned is entry is really important. Now I'm reading some of your minds like Pale and Robin and Prativa, and they're saying, well, what if I haven't entered well? Right? Am I lost? Am I lost forever? And I think the answer is no, just re-enter yourself. It may feel uncomfortable, but what you want to do is take a time out and say, you know what? I was dropped into this team in the middle of things and I didn't establish a good beginning. Let me establish a good beginning. Let me reestablish a good beginning. It's actually not a bad strategy to re-enter yourself in a system every 3 to 6 months. Not to assume that, oh, I did it 6 months ago and it's sticky. There may be new people in the team, etc. And they may not understand the context. So I think entry. Now, there's a lot of organizations that do lazy entry. Like, have any of you ever been assigned to a team or an organization? I feel like you were thrown in as a dart. Here's Bob Galen. We're going to make him coach, and they throw you in, right? That's lazy organizational entry. We need to fight against that. So you need to then reestablish it. I've sometimes pulled those leaders in and said, you know what? I need your help in entering me. Well, I threw the dart. I'm paying you. I appreciate that. But I need your help in entering me into the system so that I can be a more effective coach. I hope that helped.
Yep, excellent. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Bob, this has been amazing. I have one question that I've been dying to ask for the longest time. Why the moose?
So I wish I had this elegant marketing answer or response, Jason. If any of you are familiar with the US, I used to live in the Northeast of the US in Connecticut and New York. And then I vacationed in Maine. So Maine is on the East Coast, the northernmost state. And Maine has rocky beaches and a lot of forests and a lot of moose, to be clear. And I'm just very fond of moose. And if you've ever seen a moose, probably most of you have, they're huge. They're bigger than you imagine. They're the biggest deer. They have these wonderful antlers. They're fairly nimble. They go in the water and they're nimble. And so, I have moose everywhere. If you can look over my shoulder, I mean, I have moose figurines on my bookshelf in between the potato heads. I have a moose behind me. I have a little moose figurine right here on my desk to remind me to be moosey. And so I just have a fondness for moose. And then when I wanted to rebrand myself, Jason, and I was like, the tagline was, if you can teach a moose to be agile, you can teach anyone to be agile. And
Okay.
and so that resonated with me, and that's where it came from.
Yeah, nice. All right, guys. Thank you very much for your questions and participation. I'd imagine, Bob, we'd be able to share those scenarios, perhaps, and even have maybe a debrief type of session, maybe one day where we can practice them, and that might be something that we can do as a community afterwards. But with that in mind, I actually I do have to just mention something here as well, is that as a community, I just wanted to advise of something quite special that we've been working on. Let me just go back to sharing. We've got this tool that the Scrum Craft team had been working on, and looking at it from the perspective of, Bob mentioned before the dynamics of the environment in Agile coaching and reaffirming career development and things like that. We wanted to produce something that gave the community an opportunity to work on self-assessment and also to see whether there was anything that we could do as a team to support the community going through, I guess, some change itself. So whether you're a Scrum Master or a product owner or an Agile coach or a project manager or whatever the case might be, there might be some value in doing this this assessment and coming up with a bit of a plan on how you might tackle like your next level or stages of development. So just a free offering, something that you can sort of take away and ponder. And we thought that it was actually really well aligned to this particular session. So if you'd like to download it, there's a QR code on screen. We'll also include it in the recording afterwards. So if you don't get it now, you can get it later. All right, excellent. Thank you again for making the time, Bob. Thank you for spending the extra little bit of time with us as well. I was really conscious about your time zone more so than ours, but we don't mind going a little over time from our perspective, and really value the insights that you're able to share with us today.
Thank you, Jason, for inviting me, and everyone. Just thanks for hanging out. It was a real joy. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Bob, for the conversation.